Nebraska's corn harvest advanced 11 points and soybean harvest progressed 26 points last week. Both are still behind completion compared to the state's 5-year average. However, the 5-day quantitative precipitation forecast from the National Weather Service indicates combines should roll over the weekend. As of Thursday morning, the map indicated next to dry conditions across Nebraska. If growers do make good progress with favorable weather, some may think about applying nitrogen. But with soil temperatures at 4-inch depth ranging from the mid-50s in the Panhandle to the mid-60s in southeast Nebraska, Nebraska Extension soil scientist Charles Shapiro says the threat of losing nitrogen is high. We talked with Charles earlier this week about how to minimize the risks associated with fall nitrogen applications.
Well, the reason it's a good idea is they might have the time, and prices of the fertilizer might suit them. There might be some tax advantages. From the agronomic soils point of view, you're putting your N out at risk, and so there are certain conditions that we don't recommend putting out the fall anhydrous, and that would be any coarse textured soil, any place where there might be leaching. Those are the two main things. And then of course in our state with the natural resource districts, there may be particular fields that are in one of those phases which have further restriction on fall application.
How does soil temperature come into play?
The process, the biological process that converts the anhydrous ammonia to nitrate is mitigated or is driven by temperature and bacteria. So the warmer it is, the faster that occurs. So the idea, which has been around a long time, is that soil temp should be below 50 degrees and stay below 50 degrees. And that'll give enough time to get us into the winter when the temperature will get even lower and nitrification will essentially stop. So nitrification is going on at 50 degrees, but when it gets down to 35, it's going to be stopped. So you want the anhydrous ammonia to be in the ammonia form through the winter. If we get it Indian summer and it warms up and it converts, that's when it can be leached and lost.
Meaning that you might have to wait a little bit if you're going to do it for the soils to come down.
Right. The problem would be if it goes to 50 for a week, you put on the N, and then we have a lot of warm weather and it gets warmer. The problem with anhydrous ammonia as we wait longer and longer into the fall is that for most of the anhydrous applicators, it has to be warm out because it's the warm temperature that pushes the anhydrous through the knives. And if we have a big applicator, it needs more flow. So as we get later and later into the season, there's less and less time to put that anhydrous out.
What impact could a saturated soil have?
Actually, if it's very wet, you're not going to get the nitrification because you need oxygen. But you don't really want to be pulling a knife through a wet soil. So maybe if you have a dry soil, you put the anhydrous on, you get a rain and it gets saturated. That could be good, but that means you might get more leaching the next time you get rain. So it's much better to wait until the crop needs it to put the N on. That's really what all the research is headed towards, and sensors and grid sampling. It's all about fine-tuning the N for what the crop needs.
If you do it this fall, like you talked about at the beginning, there are some potential advantages in a specific operation. Which fields would be the best to do it in, and what form, depth, things like that?
Well, we'd want to put it on fields that don't have the possibility of leaching too much. So this would be your finer textured soils. You don't want to have it in places where the N could leach in the following year or in the spring. So if it got warm and then it stayed wet and had too much rain, you could have leaching. So you want probably areas where putting a knife track, we haven't talked about erosion, but if you're putting a knife track through your field, you might have an erosion problem. So you'd want ground that wasn't erosion prone as well.
Charles also says the use of a nitrification inhibitor with fall anhydrous ammonia will slow the conversion process and reduce the amount of nitrate produced. The CropWatch website features maps with soil temperatures at 4-inch depth across Nebraska. We'll link to those resources on the Market Journal homepage.